Good evening. Kevin says we're good to go. I'd like to call this City Commission Budget Workshop to order. Roll call, please, ma'am. Here?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
We're going to have our invocation offered by our Vice Mayor, followed by the pledge.
Father God, thank you for bringing us here tonight so that we can all work together to better this city. I pray and hope that you look out for every member of the city and every person who works at the city. Gives us a clear mind this evening. It gives us the ability to think with clear heads in order to further the city through. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get out the way, step right in the
All right. Our business item, presentation of the proposed 24-25 budgets.
Good evening. So tonight, we are going to go over some highlights, and we will talk about the general fund, ARPA, transportation, wild spaces, public places, buildings, CRA, general fund impact fees, and cemetery fund. There's a lot of information to cover. If we don't get through it all tonight, we'll just pick up Thursday night where we left off. I'm going to go through it. I've gone through the budget line by line with every commissioner. I'll go through it fairly quickly. However, if I'm going too fast or you need clarification, please stop me and I'll make sure that you understand what it is that's being presented. Before I start tonight, I really wanted to thank all the department heads. They all came together, talked about what the end goal was going to be, and these department heads put a lot of work into this budget. Really, we weighed wants versus needs, and what do we need to run each department. You're going to have a better you'll be able to see better tonight of what it costs to run each city department. Also, before I go any further, Diane put these slides together. She has worked countless hours on this budget, and she should be commended. With the work of the department head, she's worked with every department head, and they found out-of-the-box thinking solutions for a lot of the problems that we faced. The budget you see tonight is a very lean budget. There's not much wiggle room. We had to be pretty creative into meeting the expectations and the priorities that each individual commissioner expressed. We had some goals that individual commissioners put forth, and some of those goals were obtained, some were not obtained, and we had conversations about that. So I think this is the best budget, compiling all your feedback and all your priorities into the budget. Let's talk about some of the accomplishments of 2024. The Douglas Community Center remodeled and is actually having its grand opening here in a few weeks. And it's if you haven't gotten out there, let me know and I'll set up a time to get you a tour of it. They did a good job. They did a really good. I didn't see the before picture or the before product, but I've heard, and they did a good job. Also, the Priest Theater purchase. So with the Priest Theater, we had $1 million of state appropriation. We purchased the Priest Theater for $350,000, which leaves $690,000 for getting it back to where it should be, so we can talk about options for the Priest Theater then. Another accomplishment really to Angela and Jamie was they had a special election, and they had a successful one. That was a lot of stress, a lot of last minute stuff, and Angela and her team should be commended. We were able to get a grant for the new police motorcycle, which you see up there. It was a grant for just shy of $21,000, and we used the insurance recovery money for the balance, which was another $3,700 to get the motorcycle. Recently, we rolled out the Red Speed program. That's the speed cameras in the school zone. It's already up and running, and Chief is not issuing any fines until the next school year. This gives the time for us to work out any kinks, get education out to the citizens about what's going on there, and any violators between now and the school year will get a warning. I haven't got one yet. I probably should have. Admit it freely. But that's up and running. One thing about that is going to bring in revenue. That revenue can only be, is limited to specific areas such as crossing guards and training. That revenue is not reflected in the budget, and we went back and forth on it, and we decided not to reflect it because we don't know what that revenue, we have an idea. Chief has given me a number, and I think it's a realistic number, but I don't want to overpromise on something that we really don't know. So any revenue that we get from the Red Speed camera program will be just gravy that's on top of the revenue. We haven't counted for that at all. And lastly, down at the lobby, you'll notice that there's new safety glass there. Before I got here, they replaced it. It was in pretty bad shape, and they got that taken care of. The next slide will be what your projections are to finish 2024. We made several cuts to make this budget work. We'll highlight a lot of these cuts and where we moved some of these funds. And the main goal to the department heads was, one, let's be cost effective. Let's save where we can and not do any frivolous spending. I wanted to present a clear and transparent budget so you can see and the public can see exactly where we're budgeting money, where it's going, and what it cost. There is no padding in this budget. We did not inflate any line items just for additional fund. We didn't do any of that. What you have is a pretty lean and accurate budget. Some of the items that you may notice when you're looking through these projections, that some of them are quite a bit higher than what we originally were hoping for, and that is due to payouts in the city manager's office and the park and rec from the general fund. We had some pretty significant payouts when those folks left, and that we weren't anticipating, and you'll see those reflected in those departments, such as the city manager's budget and Parks and Rec. One of the key items I want to pull up is, as we discussed in the budget amendment meeting, Emerald Data, who's our IT provider, cut their professional services budget by $60,000, citing fewer last-minute unanticipated projects and allocated department-specific expenses to those departments. So what we mean, for example, Springbrook is our financial software, and there's a fee that goes with that each year. It was originally rolled in our IT budget, but that wasn't showing you how much it costs to run our finance department. So all those softwares and IT expenses that was all rolled up in the IT budget, we have chopped it and put it and allocated it to the proper departments so you could see where that money is actually being spent. Also, the big one is the returning of the vehicles. We began that process. We've already purchased the Ram 1500s. We're waiting for those to get upfitted. As soon as we get those back from being upfitted with the decals and the computers and the lights and stuff, we will turn in the Tahoes. Any questions about 2024 or any anticipation or accomplishments that we had this year before we get into the budget? Okay. Moving into the highlights. The big one, no millage increase. There wasn't even an option. We weren't going to there wasn't even an option to raise the millage rate. Property values increased more this year than it did last year. So our projected was to increase about $400,000, which is a $150,000 increase from last year. We found out about that after I met with you. When we looked at, remember we had a big deficit that we were trying to whittle down when I sat with each of you. About a week after that, we found out that the property tax coming in, it's going to be $150,000 more than what we anticipated. So that took out a huge chunk of that initial deficit that I presented to you. Priorities that were in this budget that are increases. Our police department is the lowest paid police department in the region by quite a bit. To make up for that, we are increasing or asking for a 5% raise to all sworn police officers this year. That is not enough to get us to the minimum that we need to be. Ideally, we need to raise it 10%, which when you look at the police officers' pay, it's about $4,000 per police officer, but we couldn't stomach a 10% raise all in one shot. So I'm asking for 5% for your police officers this year, and just knowing that next year, my first priority is probably the other 5%. Let's break it up so it's more palatable over the time and we can account for it a little bit better. The directors, your department heads did not get raises last year. In this budget, for all staff, there's a 3% increase for all your staff to include your department heads. We cut a lot of positions, a couple, assistant city manager, the assistant parks and rec director. We moved some of the positions around to save some money. What I've asked is to have an added FTE. Right now, we're not 100% sure what that position will be. There's a lot of positions that could really benefit the city. Right now, we're holding it off in the county or the city clerk's office as a potential HR position to take the day-to-day HR duties off of Angela and Jamie, and also to help with projects, some higher-end projects. Give me one second. We have a new software for our timekeeping and payroll, which is called Paychecks. That will help alleviate a lot of the work that Angela and Jamie do. And when we see how much work that helps alleviate, we'll reevaluate to make sure that HR position is the appropriate position. If it is, great. If it's not, what does the city's most emergent needs are? That's what that FTE is. So it's kind of a placeholder for right now, and I will definitely communicate what we intend to do with that position once we know how Paychecks affects the city clerk's office and other departments as well. You had a question, Mayor?
Just in terms of, we're adding an FTE, but overall through attrition and not hiring or not replacing, are we still overall down?
We're down.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, we're down 2.5 positions. 2.5 FTEs were down. I took the assistant city manager position in my head, and instead of funding the assistant city manager position, I don't want it. We don't need it right now. What position can I fund with that? I wanted one position where I had the flexibility to see how things run over the next 3 months and fill in an FTE where it's emergent. We could use a city planner for one. This HR clerk is kind of the first one in my head, because how the city clerk, they work hard. They work hard.
So we had it approved that the lobbyist and all that was coming out of CRA.
We're gonna get into lobbyists when I get into the city manager budget.
Okay.
Can I hold off on that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff, I could see that, we moved a lot of stuff over to wild spaces, public places that we had
You're gonna see a
approved
lot of
for-
movement from CRA and wild spaces, public places, as we got a new CRA director who went into the training, and during her training, she found out some of the money that we were spending in CRA, and the county has told us is not allowed by CRA. and it's not appropriate, so we have pulled that out of CRA and took care of it in general fund. Same thing with wild spaces, public places, things like our lobbyists, that's not appropriate for wild spaces, public places. So we pulled that out and put that in the city manager's budget. It's all there, it's all accounted for, just coming out of a different pocket of money. We're trying, the way I view budget is I try to spend the money in the spirit in which it was given. So if CRA funds are designed for this here, that's what I want to spend it on. I don't want to spend it over here. I don't want to spend inappropriately. I want to do it on the way it's supposed to. I'm very by the book, and so you'll see a lot of the cuts and savings that the department heads recommended and made kind of got eaten up, that savings kind of got eaten up because we had to pull CRA, we had to pull wild spaces, but we're still in good shape. Answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So saving from deleting the Assistant Parks and Rec Director, that alone should save us approximately $77,000. So that's, so it's that, you know, whether you look at the Assistant City Manager or the Assistant Parks and Rec Director, that's where I'm funding that FTE. Next slide, Kevin. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Here are some of the highlights and the assumptions that made. Just spoke about IT. They reduced their services, or what their service fee is, by $60,000. Part of that, and speak up, Eric, if you would like, part of that is we are no longer calling IT with last minute. We try not to, like tonight we had to, but we don't call them last minute. We need to make this happen. Or we're planning, like the paychecks. We know that's going to integrate IT. We're giving IT as much notice so they're not running around last minute. And with that, we were able to save $60,000 by preparing a little bit better. And Emerald Data came to work with us on that. Also, as I spoke, we moved department-specific software to the appropriate department, so that's why you'll see a decrease in the IT budget. Finance has allocated $13,000 to the water system in the past. That is not appropriate anymore because there was no single audit projects in 2025 for water. So what we mean by that is with the audit, you know, our annual audit, it was paid for with water and sewer and a little bit of general fund. Now it's all paid with the general fund, not the water and sewer. Reason being is, one, we didn't have any audit projects for the water and sewer, so it's more appropriate that it comes out of general fund. Also, when we get into water and sewer, you're gonna notice how tight we are on water and sewer. Water and sewer was the big challenge this year, and any money that we could not spend in the water and sewer, we didn't. So it made it a little bit more, it helped release a lot of the pressure by trying to take as much as we could out of water and sewer. So that's why you'll see there. And then replacing those 3 vehicles that you voted on last month will have a significant savings on your month-to-month expenses. Next slide, Diane. Or Ashley, I'm sorry. We were projected to, we got a projection of $150,000 more in your taxes. That helped close up any deficits that we were working with. Transfers, we transferred the cost of the cemetery maintenance from the cemetery fund into the general fund. The cost of that position and expenses increased slightly. Personnel costs went up. So you'll see when you look at the cemetery, there's a slight increase for personnel. And we used the fund balance in 2024. This is that last line before you see the totals on the up there. We didn't need to use it since the expense side had been decreased in 2024 and 2025 revenues have increased. So you'll see that the appropriated funds from the fund balance is a 0 for 2025. We're not relying on the fund balance. Does that make sense? Okay. The biggest drivers to the budget this year is the police. Again, 5% to the police, and also we're taking one of those sergeant's positions and turning them into a lieutenant position. The police chief has a succession plan. It has a more, he needs to have a lieutenant over there. And that'll come out of the sergeant's rate. So I think it ended up being like a $7,500 increase, I think, to take a sergeant to a lieutenant. Good spend of the money right there. From the clerk and HR, the election expenses and paychecks, that's where you'll see the expenses, why you see a big raise there, $100,000. Somebody had a question?
And the HR positions in there too.
Oh, yeah, in the HR position. That's in there, yep. City manager, you'll see savings there because we eliminated the assistant city manager position. And Kevin was initially 75% funded by city manager's office and 25% was by the fire. Kevin spends a majority of his time at the fire department. He does do a lot for the city. We changed his allocation, 50% fire, 50% city manager. So that's where you'll see a little bit of savings in the city manager budget there. Finance is fully staffed. They have multiple audits. Diane was out for a period of time, wasn't able to get the audit started. We're in it right now. She's working on it every day. But once we're done with that audit, we're rolling right into the next one to get caught up. So we're on schedule for these audits. So you'll see, that's why you'll see that in finance. Planning and codes. That was an area that I felt that really didn't need a full-time employee. I don't think there's enough code enforcement work in High Springs to fund a full-time employee. So thinking out of the box and talking with some of the department heads, I think Alan came up with this idea, is we put an RFP out that closed this week and we got 3 bids for code enforcement. So all 3 bids consist of the bidder doing approximately 10 hours of going around picking up all the signs and responding to code complaints. There's a stack of code complaints right now. That will be the first priority. Let's get through these code complaints and then worry about the signs. But that will be a significant savings. I'm thinking that contract, again, we have 3 bids, and next commission meeting, you'll see those 3 bids. They're all pretty relatively close, and I think we're gonna spend about $39,000 total on this contract versus paying a full-time employee. I took this, I was a little bit reluctant to cut this position and go this route, but I thought it was a really good out-of-the-box solution, and we're gonna try it for 1 year. We're only doing a 1-year contract. If it doesn't work, next budget year, I will come to you for refunding the code enforcement, but let's try to see if we can save some money and see if this works out. Public Works was over budgeted last year. We have a better, this is a right-sized budget. Streets have more budget. We have a better accurate picture of what it's gonna cost to run Public Works. And so you'll see that. And when you look at the next to the last line, the CRA TIF, that gets calculated in December. So we don't know what that number is, what that TIF number will be. So Diane gave her best guess of what that will be. We may be off just a little bit, not enough to say much, I don't think, but we will get that number in December. So for the summary for the general fund, you have the revenues at $7,514,207. Once you calculate your expenses and your transfers, you have the same number, so it's a balanced budget. Any questions about anything I've just presented there?
I have one question,
Sure.
and I don't know if we know the exact answer. What's going to be the estimated tax revenue from the solar farm? Do we know?
No, Madam Mayor, we don't. We have the overall property value for the whole city in one lump sum is what the property appraiser's office, tax collector's office provides to us. We don't have a breakdown of the solar farm right now. When we first were looking into it in June, they were still doing research because they hadn't received all the information from Duke that they needed to start billing. for the property tax, so we don't have those details at this point. We can find out. Right now, just might be a little crazy for them because they're.
No, I
trying to get up.
understand. I just,
Right.
we had been told all along, this is gonna be this huge influx of, yeah, $500,000 of ad valorem tax revenue, and it's gonna be great. So I'm just curious how close we are to that.
Right, we
tell.
definitely had a better, I'm sorry.
Go
We
ahead.
definitely had a better tax value this year than last year. You know, we're probably seeing, like the city manager said, 150,000 more than we had gotten last year. So I think that we really just have to wait until I can get the detail from them.
Okay.
So that's with the solar farm on there,
Yes.
and all it is 150 more?
It's 150 more than we estimated. So I think the estimate was like a 3% growth or something like that. I'd have to go back and look because it's been a little while since I've done it. And we came in 150 better than that. So,
Can we also ask that from the tax appraiser's office? Because I know I kept hearing it's agriculture, but the use of it is not agriculture. So I'd like to
Right.
know if they're taxing it based on agriculture, then that's obviously gonna be much lower. But if they're taxing it based on, because solar is not considered agriculture. So if they
Right.
tax it based on what the true use is, which is what the spirit should be, then that should be substantially higher.
right, it's being taxed as tangible personal property, which I'm not even remotely an
Tangible
expert
personal
at.
property?
So it's like if you have a business and, you know, your assets in your business, your ovens or whatever, it's kind of that idea. Because they don't own the property, it's based on the asset on top of it. So I don't really know for sure how they came up with the numbers they came up with, but I'll
Can we
look
try
more
to see
into
if we
it.
can get like
Absolutely,
a report from them about just how they're looking at that?
yes.
I would assume that since by right, they are permitted by right to put a solar farm on any property zoned agricultural, didn't have to be rezoned, we're not taxing it at its best and highest use, is my guess. And Duke,
looking at
and,
agriculture.
yeah, and Duke knows what they're doing. So, we'll see.
Was some type of language in the state statute, something about the use of that land, what it can and cannot be?
Just, all I know is that they were permitted by right. We couldn't deny their permit, as
Right.
any property that's zoned agricultural can put on a solar farm. And even though it is an industrial use, they consider it to be a very passive use, and they never change zoning. It's still agricultural, so, I don't see, the only bump that we're probably gonna get is just that those 700-plus acres were annexed into the city. But I don't think it's gonna be considered industrial.
No, but I think the spirit of it is what matters, and what the
Yeah.
use truly is,
Yeah.
is what I'd have to look at land code.
Well,
I'd have to have
continue-
somebody smarter than me look at land code. Let's not
We've
fool
been
that, people.
So since I've been here, we've been focusing on getting this budget to you. After this week kind of slows down for the budget, and that'll give Diane and myself time to work with the tax assessor's office to see if we can, one, just get a better understanding on how they came up with the number and the reason that they're taxing in this bucket. Agricultural, industrial, whatever. Why are you taxing it in that? Explain it to us so we can better explain to you why it's being taxed as it is. Their tax assessment's crazy right now, so we're gonna give them a little time to get that, to work that out, and it gives us time to work with them to see if we can get a better understanding.
Thank you.
Yep. So, to make this budget work, we reevaluated some fees. After this budget is over, all departments are sitting down and we're reviewing all of our fees. Some of these fees haven't been updated in years and years. Some of them that we knew needed to be updated and presented are here in front of you. So the business licenses, we are suggesting going from $30 to $50 a rate for it to $60 to $100. All these rates, we've also looked at neighboring cities. Ashley's been working on it for a while. Diane and Grace, they called cities, and we're trying to get more on track with what our neighboring cities are. And these are the fees revisions that we've come up with so far. Daycare and nursing homes go from 50 to 80. Manufacturing, utilities, medical providers, and facilities go from 40 to 75 to 125. And then the lien searches that we do, standard processing goes from $50 to $75, and rush processing goes from $50 to $150. That $150, that kind of gives them, the ones who wait for last minute or whatnot, have to have it rush, it gives them an incentive. Let's get it in, give us time to work on it. The fire department. So the fire department budget. Chief has worked hard to find any savings he can. I think he's done a great job. The fire budget, as you see it now, is not sustainable. We cannot sustain a fire department the way we are right now. Chief has his marching orders, and he's looking for every way to reduce that. So when we get into it, you'll see that there is a large transfer from general fund to fire. And we are working to continuously reduce that general fund transfer and make fire more sustainable. Chief is looking at fees, he's looking at training his officers to do some inspections so we don't have to do about a house anymore, and that brings revenue in. Any penny that the chief can find to bring into that fire department and reduce that transfer from the general fund, he's looking hard at it. So 2 SUVs, both Tahoes gone. That was a significant savings. We have, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we have a very serious buyer for the boat. They're going to their commission tomorrow night, tonight, to start that discussion and maybe bring it up to their next meeting. We don't owe anything on the boat. It ain't hurting anything for it just to sit there. But if we can get it sold, great. I'm drawing a blank on the name. What was your coordinator's name?
Was that?
Coordinator's name.
Which
The
one?
one that just left. What, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Natalie. So the fire coordinator, Natalie, so that position we are not funding, and Kevin is now going to assume your fire coordinator roles in addition to his PIO roles. So Kevin's putting on another hat. The heavy rescue, we are all committed and all believe that that truck is not appropriate for this fire department. It's too big, and it's just way more truck than High Springs needs. So we have already put some feelers out and already gotten a couple nibbles on selling our fire rescue or our heavy rescue. What I want to do before we really look at selling that is to get a third party to appraise it. The number we had and the number that some of these people, some of these other companies are looking at paying us for it, there's about a $400,000 divide between what they want to pay and what we think it's worth. Now granted, we're taking a lot of that equipment that we bought off that truck and putting it on the replacement truck, so you won't have to buy that equipment again. But I don't want to give that fire truck away. I don't want to leave money on the table. So I think it's worth the investment for us to have a third party appraise it and tell us this is what it's worth. And then we have a little more ammo to negotiate for this fire rescue or this heavy rescue. If it was to be sold, we, depending on when it was sold, will determine how much money we save on it. We have to make the lease payment in December. If we can get it sold and there's enough money and whatnot, we may be able to avoid that payment in December, the lease payment. If it sells and closes after December, we're gonna have to make that lease payment this year and the savings. That savings, we estimate, don't estimate, it will be at $90,000 a year if we can sell that truck and get a replacement. If we get rid of that truck, may not be exactly $90,000 a year we save, because we have to look at options for the replacement truck. Depending on how much money we make off of the sale of the heavy rescue will determine how we go about the next. Do we pay cash? Because Chief is not looking at a very expensive rescue truck. He's come down with a very realistic solution for that truck. We may have to look at buying that truck, leasing that truck, or whatever. We will come with a proposal for that. But as of right now, it will save us 90 grand a year, depending on what you want to do moving forward with the replacement rescue truck. One of the budget items that you approved was a transfer in from ARPA of $100,000. We are not using that. We were able not have to use that. And we are also not using an additional transfer from the general fund that was needed to balance the budget that was projected. We don't need it in 2025. So, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So as you look on this slide, you will see the transfer from general fund from 2024 to 2025 is significantly higher. That is the number that we are committed to reducing. That's the main number I'm looking at. How much revenue does the fire department bring in? And then how much more does it need from general fund to keep running? So we are trying to make the fire department more sustainable and less dependent on the general fund, and we're looking at every avenue to do that. Couple highlights for the expenses is, again, not filling that staff's support position by Kevin taking it. Kevin's saving us about $52,000 a year. We eliminated the assistant fire chief position, and netted with other changes and savings is approximately $75,000 beginning in 2025, or fiscal year 2025, and we got a partial savings in 2024 by eliminating that position. And then also during 2024, we also had a contract chief that was here that, by not having a full-time chief during that time, we were able to save a little bit of money with Chief Vogel during his time. And all of this includes a 3% raise for the fire department. We have added EMT and paramedic renewals to the budget instead of the employees paying for their own renewals. Each year, the employees paid for their own renewals of their EMT and their paramedics fees. No employee should have to pay for. What's that? I'm sorry, every 2 years. Every 2 years. Yep, every other year. The employees should not have to pay for that out of their pocket, so we've added that. Which gets me to the next one. ALS licensing is every other year, so you won't have a cost in fiscal year 2025. I think I beat the vehicles up to death. We don't have to go into that. We had some money in the fire this year. So we decided what was the best use of that to help next year's budget. And with next year, they were gonna buy bunker gear. And we had some money for the bunker gear this year. So we bought it this year, so we don't have to buy it next year. And that gave a little bit of breathing room to the fire department. Also, proceeds from the boat and mutual aid reimbursements are in, so it was a good time to make those purchases. Next is your summary for the fire department. Again, a balanced budget between your personnel and your operating expenses with your revenues and transfer from general fund. ARPA.
Can I ask one fire department question, please, if I could, please? On the trunk radio system, why is that almost doubling?
So
The county system?
let me take a look at it real quick.
Excuse me, would you like an answer? So you don't have to look.
Because we moved
It
up.
just
ahead.
includes, it
Here,
includes
read.
an emergency radio as well, that's about $8,500.
came in and
It's
gave
the
us a
communications
debrief on that.
part, so it's really not coming from TRS, it's coming from the radio system line, line
Yeah,
item on there.
It's an additional radio we were purchasing for one of the staff vehicles.
So then that will go back down next year, because
Yeah.
that's a new purchase, okay.
Yeah, it'll go back down
Okay.
to where it was.
Okay, thank you.
My question, and
Sure.
I know that the money's not there now. It's not there. I get it. However, going forward though, so that we don't have to run into the same issues we've had. I know we talked about it in the past, about trying to put some money back every year in order for the vehicles, and I can feel that spirit
yeah.
already there, and believe me, I'm happy to hear it.
Very much so. There's a lot of capital expenditures coming up in the next few years
Right.
that we're going to have to address, things like air packs and new vehicle and things like that. And it's my desire to put money away from that every year.
I love
So
it.
when those actually occur, we already have that money saved, capital, a capital revenue type savings.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to make sure, and that's going to be a theme throughout this budget process, because I feel like I'm much better prepared in year 2 than I was in year 1. But I want to make sure that we're getting back to the way that I think all of us were raised how to do it, which is, make sure that you've got the cash in order to do it, so we don't have to get into these leased vehicles, or we don't have to start robbing Peter to pay Paul, unfortunately, like we had to.
So we didn't have time this year with me getting
No,
here so
absolutely.
late.
Believe me, I know this is
and
very
whatnot.
short.
Next year, the budget will look significantly different because you will have a 5-year capital improvement plan.
I love it.
So we are planning, so these Ram 1500s we just bought, arbitrarily, they have a 5-year lifespan. We'll say a useful life of 5 years. So we know we gotta replace that truck in 5 years. In the capital improvement plan, we know we have to replace this truck. Here's the estimated cost, and we will budget for that. Also, in that 5-year plan, some of those capital expenditures are only 2 years out. Maybe they need air packs in 2 years. So we can identify when these capital expenses are needed, and we will be in a better position, so we are not scrambling around to pay for this stuff. You will see a
love it.
capital improvement plan.
Great, thank you. I really
Yes, sir.
appreciate that.
Any other questions about fire?
Yes,
Sir Wayne?
about the boat. Do we have scuba gear, captain's license, all that's going to go away, or were we handling that? How's that going to save us any money at all?
We don't have scuba gear or any, we have one person in the department that's captain certified, but I don't believe he gets any kind of incentive for doing that. So there's really no savings personnel-wise. The biggest savings is on maintenance, licensing of it, and insurance on it. So those are the 3 things that we currently use money for: maintenance of the boat, insuring the boat because it's insured, and then also the licensing every year to have the license renewed for the boat. So we save a little bit of money there. It's not a significant amount of money. However, it's an expenditure we really don't need to have.
Absolutely.
It's something that we don't really need. And the department that's looking at purchasing it will make very good use of it, so.
I was just
Because they have
afraid
a lot
that
better waterways.
if you got 3 shifts and you're going to have a captain certified
Yeah.
every shift, and I didn't know that our people were having to pay for their own certification. That seems kind of,
And that's kind of why we're looking at, the heavy rescue. In order to actually operate that vehicle the way it's supposed to be operated, we would have to send several more of our people to training classes that cost several $1,000s to make that happen. So it's really not a practical vehicle for what we're doing with it. So that's why we're looking at getting rid of the heavy also. Plus, it doesn't get down some of the roads that we need to get down. We're looking at a smaller, lightweight, 4-wheel drive type vehicle, something on a 550 chassis or something like that. Something way more practical
Good
for that
deal.
use. So,
thank you.
any other questions?
Thank you. Head out if you want. Lost my spot for a minute. ARPA. So let's talk about ARPA. I'm pretty protective of your ARPA funds. Spirit of ARPA, we look for one-time purchases that the city wasn't planning for. For example, these trucks, they saved us a lot of money monthly, so that was an appropriate use of ARPA. As I said, this is a very lean budget, and just in the last 2 weeks alone, the air conditioner went out here in City Hall. The part alone is gonna be $2,900. The irrigation system at the park went up a couple weeks ago. That's $8,500. These are expenses that come up, we have to fix, but you can't anticipate them. I have I've sent this budget to 4 people, to include my mentor, who is a public budget genius. His name is Joe Lamargo. And one of the things about it is they helped me find some of these cuts in addition with the department heads. But what we don't have is when something goes wrong. So in this, you're seeing a proposed request. You can call it whatever you want. I just called it the city manager's contingency fund of $150,000. Let me explain what this $150,000 is. The goal of this is we don't have budgeted another $2,900 for this part. This gives me the flexibility to say it's under $25,000, it can come out of my contingency fund. You have an amazing staff, and I think we need to invest in our staff. So if Chief comes and says, there's a great training program I want to send one of my lieutenants to, and it's gonna cost $10,000, but it's gonna save this, or it's gonna allow us to do this, but they don't have it budgeted. I can pay for that out of my contingency fund for unexpected expenses, as things like the air conditioner, sprinklers, and training for staff. What will happen, this is coming out of ARPA this year, because one, we don't have $150,000 in the general fund, but over the next 2 years, we will be budgeting for a contingency fund. We can't do it with ARPA. I'm gonna use that money a little different. So if something had to come up and we had to pay for a purchase, I'm gonna pay for it out of the ARPA funds so I can keep that contingency balance there. And whatever, after each year, whatever's left over out of that 150 goes into your emergency fund. I've told every commissioner, one of my highest priorities is to really start working on our reserve balance. We are very low on the reserve balance. If we had a significant event, we'd be in a little trouble. So what I want to do is commit $150,000 for expenses that we didn't anticipate, contingency, like I said, a very lean budget. We don't have any room for emergencies in there. And this gives me the discretion to use it. I will be very protective of this money. If a department head comes with a proposal for something they want me to pay for out of this contingency fund, they're gonna have to come with a pretty tight proposal. I will be very big, because my goal at the end of each year, and each year you will get a report on what I spent on that contingency fund, because I want to keep it transparent. I don't want you to give me a $150,000 blank check and let me go wild with it. I can't do too much damage with $150,000, but you still should know what I'm spending that money on. So in addition to our annual cleanup, you will get a report of what I spent that contingency fund on. I think this puts us in a little safer position. It's a better practice, and it allows a little bit more flexibility to respond to emergencies. Any questions about that contingency fund? Any concerns about it?
That's the appropriate way to use ARPA?
It is, but I don't like it. We only have ARPA for 2 more years and it goes away. And every commissioner has made it apparent that we're gonna be very protective over those funds for the next 2 years. What we can't take, well, we could, but it's not appropriate. Whatever's left over, I can put in the reserve fund, but I don't wanna do that with ARPA this year. Because we're using ARPA funds, if I don't use the whole $150,000, we're gonna leave it alone for next year. But in 2 years, we need to budget for our city manager contingency fund, similar to this, that puts us in a better position, makes us a little safer, and hopefully at the end of the day, won't be a big contribution to the reserve, but hopefully there will be a contribution to the reserve. We do not have any projects or anything new coming for ARPA. This does not include the $1.2 million that was originally budgeted for the waste treatment plant. We removed it last year, or a few months ago. Actually, I think it was right before I started. We removed it because we got some additional grant funding. Does not include the fire transfer of $100,000 that we budgeted for fiscal year '24, as we're not planning to make that move. I don't think we're gonna need it. Diane's, listen, I've been saying no. That word, no, and, because we can't afford things right now. So we were able to do that. And that wasn't for me saying no. This is staff really controlling their spending. Finally, it does not include the opioid task force, as we were never asked for the funds, and they specifically said not to send the money until they request it, so it's just sitting there.
Now, we gotta come back to us. We're about to start back up, and I believe that's gonna come back to us.
Okay.
I thought they got a grant. Didn't they get a big grant?
Yes,
And that's
they
what-
got a grant, and they don't think they're gonna need any money from us.
That's great
Great.
So
news.
that 10
That's
grand
great.
should, I believe, from what I've been told, that 10 grand will be coming back to the city, or will get to stay with us.
Good.
One more thing with that contingency plan, I just saw my notes. Also, when we have unexpected big payouts, like we had last year with the assistant city manager and whatnot, and we don't have any more money, last resort will be that city manager's contingency fund. We had a lot of payouts this last year, a lot of them. And I'm not calling anybody out in this room, but there's some people with a lot of sick hours and a lot of holiday hours. And if they were to leave us, the intellectual asset that would leave is bad, but the payout would be just as bad. All right, transportation fund. So on the top revenue, you see the local option gas tax. That can only be used for road projects. I got here, I've only been here a little less than 90 days. We got a new public works director, and he's really doing a good job over there, the public works. But we have not identified any street projects here yet. Like, this is the streets that we're gonna repave this year. We will be coming up with that, but for a placeholder, we just shy of 250,000. Let's see, 247,194. That's what Diane came up with talking with Jason. We will identify what streets. We don't have what streets they would go to yet. We will have that conversation with the commission to see what streets we want to prioritize, but we had to set money aside for the projects, so you see that. Did I say that right, Diane? Okay. The transfer to the general fund, transfer to general fund is in the transfer fund, but will likely decrease this in the coming years which will be a part of the long-term budget that we'll be working on. So we're just trying to, decrease that transfer to the general fund. That make sense? Okay.
Can I ask you a question while we're on roads and streets?
Sure.
It looks like a bunch of these went over budget. Am I reading that correctly? Like 176 Southside Court, let's just say. The amended budget was 33, the year-end budget was 40. Am I reading that in reverse?
Nope, you're reading that right.
Did it come in under budget or over budget?
Came in over, the project went over budget.
Okay.
Go
It
ahead.
looks like a lot of them went
believe-
over.
I will have to go back and look, but I believe the bids came in higher than the original projection. I mean, we first set budget at this time last year.
Okay.
I think when they got to these projects, they were higher. I'd have to look to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're.
So that maybe the cost of the work increased because materials costs going up over that time. Okay, gotcha.
I think that's a reasonable assumption. The material costs and personnel costs going up and the bids were more than what we anticipated. Any questions on the transportation fund? Next is wild spaces, public places. So, again, we pulled a lot of things out of this, and that's why you see such a big decrease in the operating budget. There was just things that were not appropriate to be spend that money on. And again, trying to keep it in the spirit of the wild spaces, public places. We do not have any projects, specific projects for 2025. However, as I said during the meeting, the canoe outpost is going to be our new Parks and Rec department. And we need to put some money, the public has cried out that that's closed, we need it open. And there's certain things we gotta do to make sure that that space is used in the most effective manner we can. So it is my recommendation and staff's recommendation that we prioritize wild spaces, public places towards the canoe outpost, as that's gonna be our new Parks and Rec department, and we can kind of get it cleared out, and maybe people can use it a little bit better. I'm trying to come up with some little bit of security. It's away from everything a little bit. So I'm looking at some security concerns. I have a meeting with the chief tomorrow. We're gonna talk about a couple things about that canoe outpost. But that's where the majority of your wild spaces, public places come. Couple things, we sold the 2 outpost vans, and the electrical work was done out there. The operating expense, when you see operating expense, which is, when you're looking at it, you'll see resurfacing the courts for the pickleball came out of it, and adding the playground chips, the chips around the playground there. Also, 20,000 of it went to the Douglas Community Center for the fencing and parking lot expenses. They're gonna cross over. It's not all gonna be done in this fiscal year. There was a back order on the fence that we ordered, and however, Jennifer Appleby came to me this afternoon, and they got a solution. It's actually gonna be a little cheaper. That was after we got these numbers, so that may go down a little bit. And the fund balance at the end will be approximate, or at the end of this fiscal year is $375,000. That's what we have available in the wild spaces, public places.
Can I ask you a question about the Parks Master Plan? Do we have that?
It is probably 3/4 of the way done. The consultant has reached out. She's on vacation this week, but she was waiting for Jennifer Appleby to start so they can get it over the finish line. I made the introduction email today. I kind of gave Jen a couple weeks to get her feet. And then I did a group email with the consultant and Jen, and they have already been emailing back and forth about what we got to do to get that over the finish line. I don't think that'll be much longer. Great question. Any other questions?
So are you planning for the canoe outpost to be the permanent office for Park and Rec
I
then?
am.
Okay.
The reason being is, one, we don't have a lot of office space. We've outgrown our space. So I had, actually, Jason Keidel came up with this information. I'm telling you, you guys should be really impressed with the staff, with some of the solutions they came up with. And Jason said, why don't we move Parks and Rec out to the canoe outpost? That will help make it so we have somebody on site for security, increase the security there. But also, we have somebody that's there that could help get it, because it's closed. So let's get it open. And by having somebody out there, and it frees up office space, it increases security, it's just a win-win situation by bringing them out there, and I do intend to make it a permanent move.
With that being said, will we be able to, as far as get grants to put parking lot in there, paved parking for public usage, or possibly, as we've talked about, a boat ramp being placed there through maybe help from the Game Commission?
So.
Will there still be room for city vehicles along with public getting in and out of there?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. We look for every grant possible. If we can make somebody else pay for it, I'm all about it. The boat ramp is gonna be very tough because it was taken out, and to have it put back in, the boat ramp, Swanee River, the management there is not permitting it. So we will be calling Swanee next week and see if we can sit down and see if we can reopen the conversation about what we have to do about that boat ramp. See if there's any solution that they can offer as far as getting it so it's back up there. Because a lot of people have mentioned the loss of that boat ramp is, it's felt. So we're gonna do everything we can to get it back out there. We just have to go through the proper channels, and I think it's gonna be a lengthy process before we can get it done. Great question.
So the office space that the Parks and Recs was actually in, what is it being used for now?
I can't hear you with the car, sorry.
And then
Go ahead, I couldn't
the mayor
hear you.
was coughing too. The Parks and Recs building, office building that they were actually using, what is it being used for now? The office that they were using.
They were using an office, the one-room office over at the old school. We are moving her out of there, And we are turning that, we need storage for your city clerk documents and some of the finance stuff that we have to retain for years before we can destroy it. We're running out of room for that. Angela's asked if she can have that room for storage for all your resolutions, all your ordinances, all the stuff she has to, as a city clerk, retain. Any other questions? Great. Next up is building fund. There's not much to tell you about the building fund. Alan's rolling it. It's a machine. He just does what he's got to do. And the fund balance on that is approximately $650,000. Alan and I will be meeting here. We've been talking about what we're going to do with that money. He has to spend that money. That money can't just sit there, and we shouldn't be putting any financial burden on citizens if we're not planning on using the money appropriately. So Alan is got some great ideas. We're gonna go through them, make some suggestions to the commission, and let you guys decide which direction to head with that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that's use it or lose it money, right?
It rolls. It rolls in.
No, I think if it.
Statute says you can keep an average of 4 years of your budget back, so the overage we have of the budget needs to be spent.
Okay.
So
what I
approximately,
remember.
we probably have approximately 300 to 350,000 we need to spend.
We're still thinking about maybe building a new building or?
Whatever Honey Badger wants to do.
I think you're gonna have a pretty good say in where that goes to.
He
though.
does. And yes, I don't like to bring up what the projects would be unless we've really kind of vetted
Right.
them, but that is the intent, I think, is we're gonna look at building a buildings, department, their own building.
Yeah, that's been being talked about since I've been up here for a while. Not a while. I ain't been up there
Any
that long.
questions for me on the building fund?
No, that's the only one I like to look at.
I tell you what.
I look
have-
at it, I'm like, that looks great.
Here, you can have mine.
Yeah, right.
Cemetery fund. The cemetery fund is required to have $100,000 balance. Approximately, we have $130,000 balance in there. Each year, we transfer to the general fund to cover the cost of the cemetery maintenance by the public works. Public works go out, and that's where you see that transfer. Any questions on the cemetery fund?
Where are we at on far as cemetery being capacity? And is it rumored, or is the bike track part of the expansion if that happens?
If we were to expand that cemetery, so we have two cemeteries, right? So we have High Spring Cemetery, and we have Pine Hill Cemetery.
Right,
We have plenty of burial spaces
at Pine Hill?
at Pine Hill.
Yes,
Yeah,
there
so
is.
We haven't talked about expanding at
Okay,
this point.
I was just curious.
We still have cremain spaces at the High Spring Cemetery.
Okay,
Yeah, it's only cremain. You can't bury unless you've already purchased at High Springs. But Pine Hill, you can buy burial lots.
Any other questions on cemetery? Great. Moving on to CRA. Remember, CRA budget has to be, it's a separate budget. It goes to the CRA board. So just giving you guys a preview of it. CRA is heading in a great direction. Amy has really taken, she's still here? She is still here. She has taken that bull by the horns, and you want to talk about somebody who is truly invested in that department is Amy. She is gone, she took her training very serious, she's relayed that training back of what she's learned, and we were able to make a better budget because of it. She's got some great ideas. She's got some ambitious ideas, but we're gonna see what we can do to support her and get on that. One of the complaints, or not complaint, one of the items that was noted was trying to get the information to you as a commission from CRA. We don't want to have a CRA meeting every commission meeting. You guys are here long enough. So right now, Andrew Miller, or Commissioner Miller, is the chairman of the CRA board. I have a one-on-one every month with every department head, some of them more often. So me and Amy have a department head meeting for an hour each day. We have now reached out to Commissioner Miller and invited him to the first half hour of that one-on-one, as he's the chairman of the CRA board, so he can get a better understanding. We haven't done it yet. We haven't had our first meeting yet. But he will get a better understanding of what CRA's mission is, what they're trying to do, and what they need for support. And then after that first half hour, I'll have my normal department head one-on-one. But I think that's gonna help increase the awareness and the knowledge of what the CRA is. We will continue to do this with whoever the CRA board chair is, which we'll see what it is next year, but, you know, we're gonna invite the commissioner out to that so they can do it. Learn more about it, because typically, from what I've seen, it's usually the junior member. Well, that junior member is trying so hard to learn how to be a commissioner, and it takes a whole year, but everybody's laughing. To me, it's hazing. You're hazing the new guy. But, which,
Yeah, talking about
no, there's a, oh, I didn't say it was bad. I'm all about hazing the new guys. But while they're trying to learn that, CRA is very important, and I think we need to increase the support that we give to the CRA. Their mission is vital to the economic development of High Springs.
Now
Amy, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Now that process, is that just how we've just been doing it for years, or can that actually be?
Not really. I think that within the last 2 to 3 years. They used to most have more senior person.
Right. And then can somebody actually go another year of that? Oh, but that's another discussion. But go
That's
ahead.
between you and the commission. I would welcome somebody that wanted to stay on. There's a lot to learn with CRA, a lot. But that's for you guys to decide. So in CRA, Amy's salary increased because she got her certification, and with the 3% raises. Remember, half of a public works employee is in here because they go around help watering and whatnot. So Public Works, half of an employee is in this budget as well. The CRA fund balance is approximately $295,000. She is working on commercial grants right now, or residential. She's working on your residential grants, and we're always looking for the commercial grants for sprucing up the downtown. Any questions on CRA? Again, this is just kind of a preview for you because you have to approve the CRA budget separately.
I have a question about, we spent CRA funds for the Priest Theater assessment, the actual, we did not.
I don't think so.
No, Madam Mayor, we haven't used any of the CRA funding that was set aside. We had a placeholder of $100,000 in CRA for contingency for the Priest Theater, and we have not used any of that.
So where did because I was told last year that we used CRA funds to get the structural assessment report and the appraisal. We did not use CRA funds for those two things?
I think that was probably at least 2 years.
I know of the appraisal, I believe, was done out of it,
So
but that was, yeah.
that's potentially money that we would need to refund back to CRA with the grant appropriations money, yes?
I have to take a look at the grant. Most grants, you can't reimburse a previously spent expense. I'll take a look at the appropriation to see if they will allow a reimbursement for a previously spent expense. I'll take a look at the appropriation, not the grant, but I'll take a look at that, and if we can, I've looked at so many different ways to try to save the CRA money. For example, the vehicle that we purchased from the CRA. We're gonna provide a vehicle to CRA anyways. Let's give Alan that vehicle and and then we bought it for cash, and that gave more money to the CRA. The CRA funds, I'd rather see spent in the community than I am on a truck. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was the one thing that I was wondering about the Priest. Whatever it is we end up ultimately deciding to do, I don't want there to be limitations on whether or not we could sell it or not, because if we use CRA funds, my understanding is we couldn't sell it for 10 years. So I just.
Something for us to look
something
into. That was a little bit-
Rattling around.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
That should be the last slide. Or no, we got one more slide. And there is your summary. Oh, go back. Oh, that's all right. It was the summary. The revenues and the expenditures match, and that is your budget for this evening. Any questions on anything that I covered? Anything I didn't cover?
I have a question about the post office.
Sure.
Now, I know it's up for,
It's up for renewal.
right, have they given any indication on what their plans
Haven't.
going forward is?
I will work on that tomorrow. Post office, yep.
Yeah, because
That-
it's up, what, December?
It's up at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's
was-
up at the end of the year.
I think that was a 30-year that we're coming off of with them.
Something. It's a long time. And if they decide not to, which I can't imagine, but if they decide not to, that reverts back to the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a couple options. They can either
Sure.
start leasing it from us monthly, they can buy it for, I think, 400 grand, or pull out.
Yep.
For them to get it back.
I will make that a priority tomorrow. I got an hour in my schedule. I got an hour in my schedule. Any other questions? Go ahead, Byron.
One while it was a rumor,
Commissioner.
they was gonna close
Really?
the post office. That was a rumor. But the postmaster told me that's just a rumor.
Okay, good.
I haven't heard any indication yet, but I will make that a
That
priority
would be,
tomorrow.
that would be so detrimental to this town if they pulled out.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
Any other questions or comments?
I know in our last commission meeting, Commissioner Williams asked about the Douglas Community Center. Did you ever get rates for what the rental rates? For
We haven't looked at any rates yet. Nothing.
And then
We
are
will-
any rates changing this up and coming year for the other facilities?
So I have to get a good understanding of who is using our facilities. We don't have leases on a majority of the people who uses our facilities, and a majority of those leases are $10 a year. So for example, I'm gonna pick on the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts building needs about $50,000 worth of work, which I have wrote a grant for, and we should hear hopefully soon. At $10 a year, how many years is it gonna take to come up with $50,000? So we are just in a huge deficit with these facilities, and these $10 a year leases aren't working anymore. So I'm going, once this budget gets through and I got a little more time, I will be working with finding out every organization or person that uses those facilities, and I'll be working with staff, and we're gonna call neighboring cities and whatnot and come up with a proposed what it should cost per room, per facility, and whatnot. And if it's approved by the commission, we will probably roll it out over a 6-month. So for example, the Boy Scouts will say, they just signed a lease, so they're in for a year, so I can pick on them. But suppose we say that that building should cost $250 a month. I just making up numbers, $250 a month. Well, that's significantly more than $10 a month. That's not fair to the Boy Scouts for us to come and say, now you owe us $250 a month. We will go to the Boy Scouts, for example, and say, we don't have a lease, we need to sign one. Talking, and again, a commission will have a say in this. We will present proposed rental fees, and then I would go to the Boy Scouts on the 1st of January and say, starting June 1st is when we're gonna redo a lease, and this is what your expense will be. So if they can't, for example, the Boy Scouts can't afford $250 a month, that gives them 6 months for them to find a solution, I'm not trying to kick anybody out, but I'm also saying that we have a lot of facilities being used for, a lot of them are being used for free, and other organizations want to get in, and it needs to increase the revenue so we can keep up with the maintenance of these facilities. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Pretty much. And then I was going to ask too about the properties that you stated that we have, that we're paying taxes to the county? Have we thought about plans on what we're gonna do with those properties?
Sure. So we have, Christie last week gave me a list of all the vacant properties that we have, that we own. Some of them we can't do anything with, they got sinkholes and nobody can build on it and whatnot. But about half of them are just sitting there. Some of them are, would never be used. It's just a thin strip of land next to a building. Well, maybe we'll look and see if the neighbor wants to buy that strip of land for X amount of dollars. Or if there's a vacant lot, we'll put it out there for sale, and if somebody wants to buy it, we'll find out what fair market value is, and that's what we will post them for. And we'll try to get rid of these vacant properties. They're not doing us any good just sitting there on the city, burden on the city. Let's get it out and get it into the hands of the community. Hopefully, they can improve the lots and increase the tax rolls on it.
All right, and my last question,
Sure.
I'm sorry. I know when Ashley was here, she stated that she had some kind of way that a certain developer had some land that was given, but their time is up. They didn't develop in time. So she said that it could be given to another developer because their development time was up. Something she was saying about Habitat taking that instead of the other developer that she had because their time was limited.
I tell you what, I don't know what you're talking about, and that would take some research. Let's link up on a phone call. I'll come see you next Wednesday anyways. Let's make that the topic of our discussion so I can understand more of what it is you're talking about, and we can look into it for you. Yeah, if the timeline's up, let's move on.
Yeah, I think that's neighborhood housing redevelopment. There was neighborhood housing redevelopment and Habitat.
Okay.
I think Habitat is doing what they need to do.
Sure.
But I don't know how many years we told them.
Yeah, she said that whatever the other one was outside of Habitat, they never even did a project.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Let's talk about that next Wednesday. Get me, so I can get some information from you, and now I can get to work on that.
He probably knows better than I do. 'Cause
I'll reach out to you
I
next
was just
week, okay?
coming in.
Yeah.
Commissioner, next week, okay? Okay, I'll give you a call next week. When I call you on Wednesday, we can talk about it.
Sounds great.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
You're like a walking tourniquet.
A walking tourniquet?
It's, I can't even compare this year's budget approach to last year. It's just not even comparable. I'm just so grateful to you and all of the staff for coming in with,
Them.
you know, all the budget cuts, the fleet that's being changed, the attrition and hiring. You know, I mean, we told you when you started, the budget was an issue, and we weren't lying.
You didn't lie.
But
And it's still not pretty. This is a very lean budget. It's
Getting better, though.
it's getting better, and it will get better years over years. Again, really got to focus a lot of this work, Diane. She has been a godsend through this. I couldn't have done it without her. And these department heads, I had to make some hard decisions. I'm not afraid to make the hard decisions, but they gave me the data and the solutions and the options where I can make those decisions with the best informed decisions that I can. And I think we presented a pretty good budget. This is what staff's recommending, and I think it's a solid budget. If anything, it's definitely increased transparency and understanding of what the money is being spent on.
yes, I'm so grateful.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Well, you got a good approach. Don't buy what you need. I mean, buy what you need, not what you want.
Yep.
That's how I run my house. If I don't need it,
Yep,
I mean, I don't want it. Only way I buy if I need it.
sure.
Wants.
I
Get you broke.
was talking, I don't remember who I was talking to today. I wish I could remember because it'd probably make more sense. But, I was talking to the youth council yesterday and tried to explain, I take the youth council very serious. I love that group. They're my favorite group. And I feel as a city manager,
They're awesome.
as a, you guys don't count. Hey, I'm paid to like you five, okay?
They didn't pick you.
No, they are just, but if you get a chance to come to one of these youth council meetings, they are brilliant young men
How
and
many city
women.
managers they picked?
Fair enough. I have no comeback. I have no comeback. But when I was talking to the youth council, and they're trying to do some really good things. And I reminded them, you have a $2,000 budget. And they, all of a sudden, $2,000 to this group is, woo, we're rich. And okay, pull back a little bit. But what I told them is, make good use of that money, because if you don't use it, I'm going to take it away next year. You're not going to get it. So use it. But remember, this is the taxpayers' money. And you as a council, the youth council, need to make good use of that. You should be able to stand up as a youth council and say, this is what we did, and be able to defend that use. And that's what I've talked at one of my department head meetings, is this is taxpayer money. And we should be good stewards of that. And I am very prudish when it comes to taxpayer money. I'm pretty sure all my staff will echo. I'm very prudish. If you're coming to me and it's going to cost money, you better have a good proposal, because I'm very, very strict on the taxpayer money.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
You might want to know that the youth council voted on Monday to spend $500 of their $2,000.
650.
650, not to exceed 650, to go buy supplies for the national night out for the police, so that they could buy supplies for the kids for their backpacks. So we're going to go shopping on Saturday. We're going to Walmart, even though they wanted to go to Target, because you get more for your money at Walmart.
I was thinking about it today. $650 worth of pencils, crayons, and paper. That's going to clean Walmart out.
Yeah,
$650 will go a long way.
Well, if they
at
don't
Walmart.
spend that, they're going to go up to the school and talk to Mrs. Harbor and others, folks up there, to find out what the school might need for supplies for the classrooms, like, Clorox wipes or Kleenex. But, they're really plugged into the community. And Mr. Marshall, you are to be commended, because you are so plugged in. I know they're your favorite, and I'm okay with that. But
I told them, you
you
guys want to start looking for grants, have one of you come in. I'll teach you how to write a grant. It's all about educating these young future leaders. I told them I became a government nerd because of my high school government teacher. She just made me fall in love with government. And these 5 young men and women at least have some kind of interest, or they wouldn't be doing this. And I feel that I should, as a city manager, take opportunity to grow them. You want to learn how to write grants? I'll teach you how to write grants. You want to learn how to understand budget? I'll help you do it. And I'm pretty big about their procedure and making them go through the right steps and teaching them how to be good civic leaders. And they're a spirited bunch.
They
I
are.
love them, though. They're
They
great.
are.
Anything else for us?
Gentlemen, thank you. I feel like even in our dissent, even when we don't agree, we are unified in our love for this community, and I'm so grateful for your input and your participation. Mr. Marshall, Diane, all of you guys, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next.
Listen, we'll
Give
take
us a
the good
couple
jobs
days.
tonight.
Yeah, okay.
So don't come back Thursday.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned? Okay.